Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. I'm sure a lot of us coming to the front and speaking in front of a large group of people brings nerves, brings some tension. For some, it's a temporary type of feeling and it passes. But for others, that type of tension and nervousness may last days, hours, weeks, years even. Today I'm going to talk to you about a story about a man who had a problem with stammering and stuttering. If you don't know what stammering or stuttering is, it's repeating the exact same words over and over, involuntary most of the time. So for example, if I were to say exercise, I would say exercise. Some of you may know a person that's like this, but for this man, he had suffered stammering, this speech impediment, for almost his whole life. Since he was 8 years old, he had suffered this. And throughout his life, he had noticed the faces of people that looked at him whenever he suffered this. And he could not escape that throughout his entire life. So much so that he went to therapists to see if they could fix the problem. Some of these therapists told him to smoke cigarettes because they thought it was a form of mental weakness and that smoking cigarettes would relax and calm the nerves so that he would be able to speak a lot better. That didn't work. Therapist after therapist, speech therapist, nothing worked. And this man was used to delivering presentations in front of a large groups of people. Actually, his work involved delivering presentations. And therefore, speech impediment was definitely a weakness whenever he delivered them. Finally, he came across this one man, referred to by his wife. This man had unconventional techniques to rehabilitate his patients. He would use the exact same things that I showed you, stretching your arms, loosening your arms and your lips, wearing headphones, so you couldn't hear what you were saying, but you could still talk and in a more relaxed manner. This man was just like you and me. He had dreams, ambitions. He also had fears. And throughout his life, he always had these fears and wondering whether he would be able to overcome his speech impediment. After a while, with this therapist, he slowly started to improve. For 1 hour every day, he would work with this speech therapist referred to by his wife. And for 10 months, he would work on it. Little by little, he would gain and improve. Other times, he would fail, he would cry, he would wonder whether he would ever be able to improve. And he had a huge presentation, probably the biggest presentation of his life, to deliver. And he wasn't sure if he would be able to do it. With this therapist actually helping him, he was able to deliver it beautifully. So much so that his therapist became his friend. They formed a lifelong friendship, being able to confide with each other, especially with this man. This man didn't have many friends. He had a lot of yes people that would nod. But whenever he turned his back, they would talk behind him. So he really trusted his therapist. This man was very, very successful, but he died, unfortunately, through lung cancer. Ironically, through those smoking of the cigarettes that his therapist had told him. He died at the age of 58. Now, this man's job was actually taken over by his daughter. You might recognize her on this bill. Albert, Frederick, Arthur, George, the Duke of York, King George VI, the King of the United Kingdom. Take that in for a second. Presentations in front of countrymen, in front of citizens. The big presentation that he had to deliver was Britain declaring war on Germany in 1939. I just want you to feel the weight of that moment, of that situation. A person where countrymen are looking for hope, they're looking for stability, and those words are not going to come through the Prime Minister or the Parliament. They need to come from the face of a nation, the king. The king has to speak. Unfortunately, this king had a speech impediment, and so he worked with his therapist, Lionel Lobb, a person who had unconventional speech techniques, who wasn't necessarily medically educated in speech therapy, but was able to rehabilitate King George. He actually helped him through the actual speech while he was speaking. He wasn't delivering it in front of millions of people on a stage. He was speaking through the radio, and his therapist was right there with him to help him all along the way. My fellow Toastmasters, what can we learn from King George? He's royalty. He has no worries money-wise. He's royalty. But he's a man just like you and me. He has his fears, he has his frailties, he has confidence problems. He wakes up and sleeps at night wondering whether he can actually improve. But the thing that helped him was his therapist. But it wasn't necessarily that therapist, it was the friendship. It was having that solid stability, being able to have an environment where he could speak, he could fail, and that person would not judge him. My fellow Toastmasters, every man can have this solidarity. Every man can have this environment of growth where they can overcome their own inconsistencies. Every king, in every king there is a man, a human. And in every man, there's potential to be a king if you grow and if you have that community. My fellow Toastmasters, this can be your community. This can be your solidarity for growth. I'm Toastmaster.
I just have 1 minute for the timer just for Joe to finish up her evaluation.